I'll be going through the answers quickly, so make sure your course book is open and in front of you. And please stop and rewind the video as you need to. So, got your book open in front of you? Are your answers in capitals? Want to know why the answers are the answers? Then let's go. For question number 1, we have to choose the correct auxiliary verb which fits the language structure that we've got here. And that verb emphasises exactly what it is that Jim does, which is why does is our answer. What the gym does is work with ... Because of the structure that's used here, what the something does, if you don't know that particular structure, then I recommend that you go away and you look up expletives, grammar expletives, and you have a look up cleft sentences as well. If you have a look at those two, you'll be very familiar with the language pattern, which you see time and time again in particularly this Use of English 2 paper. For question number 2, the general context tells us that we're talking about the person who came up with this idea. But of course we can't say that and we don't know who it is. So we've got to choose the correct pronoun to reflect exactly that, the person who. Which means that we're only left with one possible answer, and that is whoever. Whoever came up with ... For question number 3, this gap forms the first word of the expression which follows, the difference. And particularly this is used with the verb beforehand, make. And it basically means that it's a very important thing that allows the difference to be identified or made or whatever it is. The word that we're looking for to complete the expression is all, to make all the difference. Question number 4, exactly the same idea as question number 3, where this is the first word in an expression. If ever you see, particularly in this exercise, of view, then you know the first word is going to be point, as it is in this case. If you see point of and then there's a gap, then you know that the word more than likely is going to be view. So just something to bear in mind. If you don't know that phrase, a point of view, make sure you know it now. For question number 5, we have to pay particular attention to the sentence structure. If we have a look at the sentence structure, we can see that there are 2 clauses to this. It says, the initiative has been a great success, which is the main clause, and then what follows is a subclause which modifies in some way that main clause. What's the relationship between the two? Well, the relationship is that there is possibly some element of contrast. It says here that, and this contrast is that elderly people are not so willing to do something. So we need to choose the correct subordinate conjunction which emphasizes or communicates that contrast. If we have a look after the gap, we've got that helpful structure, the fact. And that means that we can think of one of 2 possible answers. We can either say despite, which is the answer, but you might also think of in spite. Now, in spite is not the answer because there is an of, and that's what we need with in spite. In spite of the fact that means the same as despite the fact that, but it's that key preposition which is not there, and that's why the answer here is despite. For question number 6, what we need here is a preposition which has the effect of explaining. There is one explaining preposition, and it's always something to bear in the back of your mind, particularly with this exercise, and that is as. As a security measure, ... For question number 7, if we understand the context, we understand what type of word we need here. If we understand the context, it says that everyone has to have a criminal records check, and that there can be no exception, and it's this negative form which isn't communicated in this sentence, which is why we have to put it in this gap. Now we've got that word afterwards, which is exception. So what is this negative word that we can use with exception? Without exception. For question number 8, real test of your knowledge, back to those days when you're looking at alternatives to if, and you might think that you can use if and whether interchangeably. No, you can't. We use whether in certain circumstances, and we use if in other circumstances. And if you don't know what those rules are, then I encourage you to consult a good grammar book or get onto the internet and find out why. Here, after the gap, we're talking about 2 things. whether something will catch on nationally or further afield. So two things, nationally or further afield, in other words, internationally. Whenever we're talking about two possible options, we use whether, which is why it is the answer in this case.